30 years ago, were your politics a lot different than they are today?
Well, I voted for Jack Kennedy. I voted for Jack Kennedy over Richard Nixon.
When you ran for Senate, and
I think I began, when I became an editor, I was editor of a magazine called America, and that was in the late 60s, and I began to really shift my philosophical and political moorings, and I began to see the unwisdom of the Great Society, and I suppose you could probably put me into that neoconservative swing with Norman Podhoretz and Irving Kristol. About that time, I think we're all beginning to say, now wait a minute, let's take another look at this whole thing. Hasn't it all gotten slightly out of hand? And then I was studying the blacks, too, people like Tom Sowell out at the University of California in Los Angeles or San Diego, I forget where he was then, and the things that he was saying about the bondage that this type of quasi-socialist society was creating for the black community and other minorities, you know, the psychology of dependence upon the government, and how this was really thwarting the development of the full potential of human beings. That made a lot of sense to me.
Last question, last chance for you to talk about the McLaughlin Group as the host and founder and creator of that program. Where do you want to take that show?
With regard to Ronald Reagan's disposition, I think he is authentically a very kind, and he's one of nature's noblemen. He has what we used to say in Catholic theology, an anima naturaliter, christiana, a naturally Christian soul. He's a sweet guy. Which word? Anima, A-N-I-M-A. Now, number two, with regard to Jesse Jackson, I think that's why we engage in foreign aid.
John McLaughlin is our guest. He is the Washington executive editor of National Review. He has his own television show called the McLaughlin Group. Did anybody after that program ever want to, did they ever get really mad at each other?
My boys?
Your boys?
No, they're entirely civilized human beings, but they can express themselves with great vigor and great passion, but at the same time realize, you know, on these public policy issues, Brian, I'll tell you something. I can hardly think of one public policy issue where there is not an abundance of truth on both sides. There are executives in the United States today making $2 million, either in straight salary or in attendant benefits. It's gotten way out of line, and Brock's point is very well taken, and I'm sure this is going to stir needed national debate on how far out of line, how far in excess compensation for executives has become. How much does a man have to make to be a CEO of a corporation?
Ford Chairman Philip Caldwell received $7.3 million last year in salary, bonus, and stock options.
Incredible. $7.3 million.
John McLaughlin, among other things, is host of his own television program. How's that doing? Last time you were here, I think you were on in Chicago and in Washington.
Right. Well, now I'm happy to report that the McLaughlin Group, which is a 30-minute public affairs program featuring 5 luminaries. Well, I'm not a luminary, it's you are, Brian. There are 4 luminaries and myself. Robert Novak, distinguished columnist. They all are. Jack Germond, who stars in the Today Show. Morton Kondracki, who is the executive editor in Washington of the... Is that one of his columns today?
This is this morning's Washington Times. Do you think he likes to be published in the Washington Times?
I think Morton likes to see his name appear wherever it will hold hope of doing some good, and I'm sure that it will there in that distinguished newspaper. And also Patrick J. Buchanan, who is a worthy conservative. We debate public policy issues of moment, and every week for a half hour, and it's a lively show, and I'm now happy to say that we are on 102 public broadcasting stations across the country. It's called the McLaughlin Group, and I hope this audience... 102. A lot of your audience watches our show, I'm happy to report.
We'll find out this morning.
Good. I'll be looking forward to that.
The papers this morning are full of interesting stories. The side stories, the stories